Hey, what's up guys, Max here. Gonna do a little bit of a voiceover over some of these fights, some of these clips that I was able to get from, recording just the last season. We're gonna see some like very close matches. I think these first fights we start with very close matches. And we're gonna be talking about like some thoughts in the meta, some thoughts about Battlegrounds, especially now having felt the changes of the Alliance solo rank rewards, the Alliance event update rank rewards, and kind of how I feel, kind of what I predict to happen here coming in the next couple of seasons. First of all, let's talk about the meta. So the meta nuke, right? I felt like when it comes to nuke metas, it's always the split. This time I felt like it was maybe like a 70-30, 70% of the people, the players didn't enjoy it. And 30% enjoyed it, and so the people that enjoyed it, you have to be fast, you have to be fast, and you have to be careful. One little chip damage, losing 5 to 10% of your health, it was crucial. You pretty much lost at that point because your opponent wasn't going to lose any health, or if they lost health, then losing then it kind of balanced it out. But everybody was getting KO between sometimes the low teens when it comes to the time, so 12, 17, 18 seconds, but on average I think it was between 25 to like 40 seconds, the highest where champions were getting KO, and it had to do with the combination of the nodes. So as soon as the defender had 2 bars of power, you launch your special 2. You were pretty much KOing, if not doing majority of the damage on the defender. Defenders like Thing were probably maybe the best, but depending on the draft, of course, it's always RNG. Depending on the draft, you always had to draft certain champions to be able to do it fast. Kate Bishop was probably my best against Thing. She would take him down fairly quick, very quicker than you saw here with Scorpion. Probably better gameplay too. I could have gotten more special ones, but that's kind of like how long it took me. But yeah, overall feelings for me, I think it was I like these nuke metas too. At this point in the game, 1 season, 1 year into Battlegrounds, over 1 year into Battlegrounds, I feel like majority of the players that do play Battlegrounds have most of the champions ranked up, rank 5, ascended. So you saw a lot of different names kind of showing up at the leaderboards at the top because of this, where at the beginning of the seasons, where if there was a lot of nuke metas, you only saw a handful of players always playing them and showing up at the top because they had the decks, they had the champions ranked up for these type of metas. But over the months, seasons, we've seen champions kind of like prioritize based off Battlegrounds, and those were ranked up, and because of that, I think we saw a very large portion of like the player base change when it comes to nuke meta. Everybody had a chance. There was really no top defender, as opposed to going up against somebody that has these like 3 crazy defenders and solid amount of attackers. You end up wasting your bans on either their defense or their offense, which then cripples you. So you end up kind of like, I don't know what to do. But with this meta, I found that most players had a chance to compete because of that. It just required you to have a really good, these really good attackers, which most people end up having already part of their deck. What I also saw was a big change on the amount of contribution, for sure, when it comes to players, and a lot of that had to do with the updated Alliance event. Season 18 introduced the T4 fragments for the top alliances out there. I mean, yes, it's all alliances are going to get some, all the way down to like the top 20% alliances, but majority of these rewards are going to be found, I would say, in the top 10. Top 10 alliances are going to have 42,000 fragments, 64, and the number 1 alliance is 85. So that's kind of the next portion I want to talk about. Now, having felt what this feels like, kind of expectations for the future. We don't know full scores yet of all alliances, but on most, I would say, competitive alliances are putting up scores between 30 to 45, I would say, million points, which is pretty crazy, right? If you think about it and you're listening to this or you're watching this and you're like 40, let's just go 40 million points. That divided between 30 players, if they spread it out evenly, you know, obviously some players are going to do more than others, but you're looking at having a minimum of at least 1 million, or if not, like 800,000 to 900,000 for that minimum. So for Relax, I ended up myself pushing at the beginning of the season, of season 18. I was like, okay, let me put up some points. I thought, I honestly thought I was going to be pushing close to 2 million points. And I'll make a separate video showcasing my points, my score. I stopped when I realized kind of like, I kind of knew already going into it that our minimum for Relax was a little bit too low to compete for the top 10. But I'm waiting for the results to see, even with our score, if it's still doable, because 800 million points per player, it's as much as I can do that. Not all players can do that when it comes to like contribution and just time. It does take on a lot of time. The cost is involved too as well when it comes to units and elder marks. We'll talk about that, the cost of battlegrounds and the cost of the game, and especially for competition in a second here. But it takes a lot of time. It can be frustrating, especially if the meta is not an easy one. But this would probably be considered the easiest meta because it's just a matter of speed and just being able to take down the champions, the defenders, super quick, right? So that's kind of like, I guess, what I thought this meta would be like the best one for this purpose, for like just to get points, right? But I don't know. I guess ended up being a little bit more difficult than I thought. Like here, perfect example of this. Like I can't believe Jugs and Weapon X fight. Like he was pretty much dead, and I messed it up, and I ended up dying in a record of 35 seconds. So it was pretty bad, but we managed to get the W here. It's crazy. So going into contribution and expectations here when it comes to points. If you, depending on the alliance you're in, if you're in a, what I would consider competitive alliance war and battlegrounds alliance, expect your cost going forward to be really high. I would say units with elder marks to keep a score contribution, either the minimums across the board and everybody takes on the load of your alliance, because you can't expect players to put up 2 million, 3 million points every season. The contribution from all players has to be stepped up, and I would say at a good number for to be at when it comes to your 30 players, I would say anywhere between 800 to maybe 1 million points contribution. And I know it's a lot, but I think that's kind of right now at the beginning of this updated alliance event seasons is what should be expected to be in, if you're trying to shoot for the top 10. Now if you're not wanting the top 10 when it comes to rewards, then yeah, you just, whatever your minimums are, maybe 300, 200 per player when it comes to battlegrounds will be more than enough, and that gets you the placement you want, which is not in the top 10. But shooting for that, I feel like you do require that. So going back to what I was saying, I was gonna push for like close to that millions of points, but realizing as the season started that our minimum wasn't high enough, I ended up going for just a little over 1 million points. So don't think that's gonna help much. I think just overall, I'm waiting to see kind of how we place, and again, it's going to be a topic of discussion to see what the alliance does. Obviously having the focus, Relax focuses on Alliance Quest and battlegrounds, where Alliance Quest doesn't cost you anything to play it. I mean, you might die a bit and have to buy some revives, but we get those for free. Herc is out there, so he can pretty much do almost every fight and without healing, and just a small revive. But when it comes to the cost involved for Alliance War and AQ, it doesn't compare. Alliance War is completely crazy expensive, and that's kind of the other topic here when it comes to the cost overall, right? If we're seeing these scores stay, which I assume we will probably see a huge spike because of just this season 18 was the introduction of Alliance, the T4 fragments and the Alliance event. That's for sure. It should settle down a little bit because it's not going to be kind of healthy to keep that high score. But we've seen this in the past with when it comes to arenas. We thought like, oh, there's no way these scores stay that high, and they kept going higher and higher and higher. So that's what I expect also to see when it comes to battlegrounds. Is I expect to see like a bit of like a steady but keeping scores around 30 million, I would say, is what I'm expecting to see when it comes to seasons. Which, if you break down that point across all 30 members, you're expected to put at least 1 million points per member. I think that would balance it out perfectly. But I think on average, maybe if you put a minimum when it comes to an alliance between 750 to like 900, there's going to be some players are going to do more. The ones that enjoy and love the battlegrounds, then that gets you to that over 30 million points as an alliance. But at least when it comes to, like I was saying, the cost involved, right? I think what we're going to be seeing is obviously this cost to put up 1 million points or close to it. You're probably expected to spend between 3 to 6 thousand units, and buying elder marks. You're going to get some of those back from the season, but those are going to be expected to be used. And also depends your win-lose ratios. Obviously, the more you win, the more points you get. But having to know that you're spending every month, every season, at least 3 million units on elder marks for battlegrounds or higher, then you have that cost involved, right? The other cost involved is going to be picking up the latest champion. So how do you pick up the latest champions? The easiest way is going to be buying it for $100, and it makes sense. And this should always make sense for Kabam as a business. They need to be bringing in the latest champions to contribute and shine in battlegrounds, whether it's battlegrounds or Alliance War. I think you have majority of players wanting to buy champions for battlegrounds over Alliance War. That's how I feel at the moment. I feel like if we keep at the excitement and if we keep at focusing on battlegrounds and tuning it up when it comes to rewards, we're going to see that obviously that's going to be the major game mode of all. I mean, Alliance Quest, Battlegrounds, all these game modes are Alliance War are not going to just die. It's just, but we're going to be seeing obviously that drive the business, for Marble content, for Kabam. And it makes sense. You need to have the latest champions do the most work. So, that's $100. Plus maybe the $200 in units you're going to spend to top off your account to be able to spend in Battlegrounds. So just in Battlegrounds alone, you're probably looking about $400, somewhere around there for maybe both champions are Battlegrounds champions, maybe only one, but between $300 to $400 a month. Now let's put you in a Alliance War competitive alliance with Battlegrounds, then I don't want to say double that, but add another maybe 100, 150, 200, just in case you end up using units for and you don't have the health pots, you don't have the revives doesn't matter, but you don't have the health pots and boost for Alliance War. You used them up and you got to buy them, so the cost for Alliance War does get expensive very quickly, so that can fluctuate from almost no cost to like super expensive. So this is kind of what ends up happening. You look for the game modes you enjoy, and, maybe you want to get into an alliance that pushes for Battlegrounds and you join them for maybe a season or two, get those rewards, and then then you go back to like an alliance that pushes for Alliance War but not so much Battlegrounds, or you find one that pushes in both, or you find there's so many alliances out there. You find one that pushes in all 3 game modes: Alliance Quest, Battlegrounds and Alliance War. So that's kind of, you know, there's some time right now to define alliances, especially after you know, having them to know, like, okay, we want to be in the top 50, in the top 110, and, you know, we want to be in the top 5. You kind of, obviously, everybody wants the best rewards, and I get that. But right now, majority majority of players are going to speak, and that's going to define kind of what alliances end up, you know, just kind of describing themselves as like, hey, we always are going to shoot for the top 10, top 5. And based off that, knowing that information, these are the expected minimums across the board. And so I think, again, we should be seeing some changes here in the next, you know, season or two of alliances, kind of like showing, hey, this is what we want. This is what we shoot for. So expectations of these scores are what you look for. Now, as a player, I would say you want all these rewards. You got to go in. If you ever step into one of these competitive alliances, you do have to go in there with the expectation of your contribution. You know, you can't go in there and saying, I want these rewards, but you know, or if you have no expectations and don't know what this feels like when it comes to your contribution, whether it's Alliance War or Battlegrounds, I do see some players get frustrated, you know, and just end up quitting because of Alliance War and Battlegrounds. The frustrations they have, they just, like, I don't know, something happens, they snap, and then they leave. And then the worst thing you can do is leave your alliances, your friends, or maybe not friends because you just joined this alliance, and leave the 29 other people that are there just like high and dry with, like, okay, what do we do now? We need to find a player like mid-season, at the end of the season. So if you're gonna, I would say this is just final thoughts here. If you're gonna join a competitive alliance, whether it's for Alliance War or Battlegrounds, you gotta stick through to the end. There's rank rewards, there's rewards that get paid out. So most alliances don't just switch around players that often, especially at the top. And if you are at the top, obviously you've had some experience of this, and you know, you should know better. But you know, we still have those players that just burn out, get frustrated, and end up wanting to quit towards the end of the season, which ends up really causing a lot of problems for, you know, for alliances, because they have to kind of, or the officers look around to pick up players. But yeah, overall, guys, I think, you know, we're going to be seeing like high scores for sure. Expenses when it comes to the games, the game, it's always going to be there. But for Battlegrounds now, with the Alliance event updates and the T4 fragments, yeah, they're gonna get pricey. Now, I can kind of see it maybe die down a little bit just because of the sales of like July 4th around the corner. We should be seeing some T4 alpha fragments, but that can be said for anything. You can just be like, hey, Max, let's just wait and buy the T4 fragments for cash instead of spending the $200 plus time in Battlegrounds to contribute, you know, hundreds of thousands of points, over 1 million points, to be able to place and score in the top 10. So that could also be said, but this is the point. If you're in a competitive alliance, if you're in an alliance that just competes, that's the point. You got to set yourself apart in one way or another to be like, hey, we're going to be top 10, top 5 consistently, and to keep that, this is what we need to do, you know. So I think overall those are going to be pretty, like, what again sets those alliances apart. So we're going to be seeing that. I can't wait for season 19 to read the nodes, so we should see those by tomorrow. Today's Thursday, the release of this video, and we should see them and figure out obviously what champions. I'm assuming Arcade and the latest champions are going to be very good. The last month's champions too, for this game node. But yeah, looking forward to that, guys. So take care. If you made it this far, drop a like on the video. I would appreciate it. A lot of just back and forth, just throwing out some thought there while we see some of these fights and footages of like me fighting at the end. Some mistakes happened, but here we are. can't wait for the next season to come and see how many points we put up. But yeah, that video, when it comes to my point contribution and almost same thoughts and process, it's coming up next. I'll probably get that out tomorrow. Once we get the scores and see kind of how we place here as an individual in my solo and then also as an alliance. But for now, guys, take care. I'll see you on the next one. Peace.